everyone, I'm Toni Lontis and this is the Everyday Business Show.
I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, because if I fail, that means I fail for my entire female nation, I call it.
Is that possible? That was the question for myself. And it is absolutely possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm your host, Toni Lontis, and this is the Everyday Business Show. I have another incredible guest to chat to today, but a little bit of housekeeping before we get on with the show. Remember, if you're listening to this live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, you will find the notes attached to this show beneath the show, and you'll have all the contact details for not just me, but for our wonderful guest today. And if you're listening to this in replay, please know that you can see other interviews in this series on Binge Networks USA, Hero Go, Paz TV, and on the Toni TV channel, available on all Roku, LG, and Samsung smart TVs across the planet. You can also jump on and subscribe to the Everyday Women's Network for women across the world, talking to everyday women about all the things that matter to us. We've just launched our new platform, and think of it as Netflix for women. Now, each and every week, we do a welcome to country, and this is an incredibly important part of our acknowledgement to our Indigenous forebears, particularly in Australia. So I want to respectfully acknowledge the Yugambeh language region of the Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, the traditional owners of the land on which we broadcast and speak today. I want to pay my respect to the elders past and present and emerging, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples watching or listening today. Now, this show is called The Power of Forgiveness and a Redemptive Heart. And I am incredibly grateful to my guest today, Karen Whelan, and I'll be introducing you to her in a moment. But here's what you need to know about this glorious human being. Karen Whelan is a transformational psychotherapist, intuitive consultant, tantric teacher, rising star healer, workshop, Women Gone Wild facilitator. Isn't that a wonderful tongue twister? Let me just say that again. Workshop for Women Gone Wild facilitator, a retreat leader, an international best-selling author, as well as being a self-published author for 2 memoirs. Karen is also the founder of Solution Therapy, which offers transformative services to companies, individuals, groups, couples, and teenagers. Karen has worked with clients for over 14 years and has witnessed thousands of clients transform their lives. Her work has allowed her to sit with world leaders like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Gabrielle Marte, while training in living inquiries, and the incredible spiritual teacher, humanitarian, and wellness expert, Derek O'Neill. Karen's work has earned her invitations and coverage on TV and radio shows, and she has written a monthly wellness column, served as a keynote speaker on the Women Gone Wild Summit in 2021, and has been featured on Forbes USA Today, Los Angeles Weekly Times, Hollywood Digest, Yahoo News, Thrive Global, and many other outlets. She has overcome so many childhood adversities, from homelessness, substance abuse, and sexual abuse, and she has taken her power back and has been on her own healing journey of plant medicine, silent retreats, and has learnt from her spiritual teacher, and is also trained as a licensed psychotherapist. Karen weaves her clinical knowledge and her uncommon wisdom about life, and guides her clients home to their authentic selves. We are incredibly grateful to have Karen Whelan on the show today. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Toni, for all of that. I think out of all of that, the piece that sat with me was your description of my character. That is the truth of me. And then all of that is just, it's just a reflection of where I've gone with my work and where I've gone with my life's path and all the things that I've done. But truly the most identifiable part out of that is just my compassionate, redemptive heart. That's what I mostly identify with. The rest is great, but
and that's
the
most beautiful part of Karen, I have to say, audience. Before we get to talking with Karen, I want to share with you one of her favorite motivational quotes, and that is, "Nothing is here to hurt you. It is here to wake you up to the truth of who you are." And that quote is by Derek O'Neill. Karen, tell us what that means to you.
Oh, I fell upon that quote during a very tough period of my life. And you know what it reminded me of? I was overwhelmed. I was locked into the experience. I was overwhelmed by the emotions and the pain of the experience. What that really reminded me of was just this beautiful memory to not personalize the experience or the event, that it's here for a reason. It's here as a lesson. It's here to show you more about yourself, inside of yourself, that you wouldn't have gotten to meet or understand or learn had this event or situation had not come on your life's path. So it gave me great solitude in amongst a lot of emotional upset during that time frame. Great quote.
I have to agree with you, Karen. The importance of understanding that there is growth through adversity, and terrible things happen to other human beings. And if you can learn and grow through those experiences, they create something magical on the other side, don't they?
They really, really do. And what you're also pointing to, which I think is very important, when anyone is going through such a painful event, we lose our power in that. We forget our own brilliance and our own strength and our own resilience in that. So I like to find other ways of thinking that helps me to reframe and to restructure the experience, because I know I've no control over what life is going to bring to me, but I really have the power of self-autonomy and self-agency. I have the power to choose to reframe it in a way that's going to benefit me and support me as I work with it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Karen, I'm just going to ask you something that's just popped into my head.
Great.
There's some healers out there that often say words like, well, you brought this into your life, or you attracted that because that was your soul contract. I'm actually really curious as to what you think about those sorts of wordings to people who are quite traumatized.
Exactly. Great question. So for me, we have to meet everybody where they're at on their life's journey, and life's journey is not also just about being here, having this human experience, but it's also about understanding that, we're going to be at different stages in that experience. And some people might, have a certain consciousness, and other people may not have that consciousness. So somebody who's in genuine trauma, is not going to identify with that. That's almost going to feel like as if it's shaming or blaming. And they might integrate that into their shame process and feel, oh my God, number one, it might make them feel angry. Well, I brought this into my life. No, I didn't. I didn't ask for this. And number two, then it might make them feel ashamed that where they're at right now, what's wrong with me? Why don't I get that? Why can't I be there like others, and for me, there's nothing wrong with evolution. There's nothing wrong with people who can identify with that and really see that as a transformative piece of work to work with. In other words, it's similar to what I said. Life isn't here to hurt us. It's here to wake us up.
Yes.
You know, again, someone who's, you know, really genuinely in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not helpful, is it?
no, because they don't have that inner emotional separation from the pain. They're in the pain, they're identified with it, and rightly so, because this is the part of being human. You know, when when events happen, we're going to have a reaction to all of that. So for someone to come along and make it sound like, you know, oh well, it should be like this, you know, the shoulds. I always have to be careful with the shoulds. The shoulds have shaped our mindsets from the day we came in here with our parents and our peers. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. It can rob you of your authenticity and the expression of who it is you need to be with suffering. We're all going to be with our suffering in our unique way. And my job in this world, I feel, is to really meet the person where they are in that, whether it's climbing down on the floor with them, holding them there, walking with, going on a journey with them, you know, a walkabout, you know, to honor the culture over there, as you call it, a walkabout. Or if it's just meeting somebody in a different consciousness, it's all just consciousness expressing itself very differently. And there's nothing wrong with any of it. Yeah,
I agree. You have to get a certain way through your healing process, and healing is a process, and it can be a long process. It can be a short process. It's usually a painful process. However, once you get a certain way through, then you're able to look at things differently. So thank you for clarifying that for me, Karen. I want to get back now to Women Gone Wild, and it's an awesome name for a book. What did you write about?
Oh, this book, you know, it was an incredible opportunity. So it was a collaboration. I was a co-author. I was in this book with, you know, 21 other incredible women.
I was just going to say, they're really amazing women, Karen. I know most of them, and they're really cool.
Oh, you know, it was just an incredible timeline. Like, here I am in my little sitting room in Ireland. It's in lockdown. You know, I'm mostly from the top up, I'm decent, but I'm wearing my pajamas from the bottom down, as I'm sure the whole world did during that time of Zoom, the birth of Zoom. And, you know, I started to connect with all these incredible women from all around the globe. And we wrote about Wild represents wealth, intuition, leadership, and diversity. So we were the wealth.
Amazing. Like, just the acronym of those. I think it's fantastic.
And we were the Wealth Edition authors for the Women Gone Wild, which is a guide to fearless living. So the vision for Rhonda Swan, who, you know, brought all of this together, was the visionary of this and the birth of this. You know, the vision of this was to really, you know, bring about, you know, women's voices in a very powerful way, you know, because now we're moving into that ascension. All women are coming together. The work right now is about community-led work.
Karen, it's very exciting, isn't it? I'm so glad you brought that up, because I talk about it constantly, that ladies, the next decade is particularly about you. So if ever there was a time to use your voice and spread your gloriousness across the globe, now's it. No matter what your age is.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we had the wonderful author, Diane Wentworth. She's in the book. So it doesn't matter what her age is. This woman is she's a beacon of wisdom and light and radiance and, you know, grace. So it was, the Wealth Edition. So my chapter was, you know, around uncommon wisdom, uncommon wealth, you know, because I never grew up with financial wealth. So I wanted to try and define wealth from my personal journey, which was, I found Karen, I came home to myself. What does that really mean to the audience? It means I had self-hated and self-rejected from a very young age, and that created so much suffering in my life. And then the work was to come back and break away that version of Karen who was created because of trauma, who was created out of defense, who was trying to shield herself from pain. But at the same time, I was co-creating with the universe, with life, self-sabotage outcomes. So, and when I healed all of that, I truly found the truth of who I was. I found my authentic self within, in an honest way. I found her. And when you find you, and you really can like feel into and taste the essence of your own presence, you will feel so enriched. Nothing out there can validate this inner knowing of who you are. You're not reliant on material objects. You're not reliant on the values from other people or the validation. It's just this real enriched experience with yourself. So I wrote about that. That was my uncommon wisdom.
Wow. I'm so glad that I've been able to talk to many of the women in Women Gone Wild, and it is incredible privilege to talk to women about their journeys. And in talking about journeys, we have to talk about your childhood and what happened to you. And I'm just going to say that I like to let the listeners know that this is a trigger warning for anyone who might be listening. I like to have authentic and real conversations with real women. So that means talking about some pretty hard stuff from time to time. And Karen is no different. Karen, your dad was an abuser. Can you tell the audience how that impacted on you?
Yeah. So, let me just bring myself into that energy, So it totally robbed me of, really knowing myself in a real way. I became this object of pleasure for someone else. I was an instrument to self-regulate them, to give to them something that they needed because of their own inner trauma and their own inner fragmentation. And as a result of that, I endured sexual abuse from a very young age until I spoke out about it when I was 14. And I spoke out about it at a timeline where, the culture in society was keep it quiet, don't speak, keep everything private behind closed doors. And, I am not about that. I have come to recognize that I am a system changer.
Yeah.
So at 14,
I have to acknowledge, Karen, that at 14, that was such a courageous thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I tried to talk myself out of it so many times. I changed the day when I was going to do it. The fear, like the fear to stand up and say, this is happening to me. And the fear of, what if this is not believed in? What if this person does not believe in me? What if they put me away? And that was the burden that I had to carry with me as I walked into a social worker's building that day. I just walked in. I had enough. And I knew for me, what had happened was my friend said to me very strongly, well, if you wanted to stop, you can do something about this. Toni, I never realized that I could do something about this.
Yeah.
That was the piece that was truly missing for me, that I had control here, that I had power here to do and stop this. Never once in all the years that I endured it did I ever contemplate that. Yeah. It just, I hated it was happening to me. And what did that hate do? And that's the piece you were asking about. That hate became what we call retroflective anger. I turned that in on Karen, and I furiously hated myself. I hated Karen. I hated me. I hated my body, and manifested as rejection of my physical body. I projected so much hate onto my body. It destroyed relationships in my life, romantic ones as I got older, because in that intimacy with another, all of that trauma would come back up. This fear of they're going to do this to me, or I would end up in a relationship with a guy who would be an abuser as well, not in the same way, but in an emotional way, because I was almost groomed, you could say, or molded into thinking that this is okay, that this is all I'm worth. I'm only worth this style of a relationship. I never knew. I couldn't decipher, I couldn't even comprehend a healthy relationship and what that looked like. There was no healthiness in my childhood. So I spoke out at 14. I reached out and I spoke the words, and The social worker was incredible on that day.
I'm
She
so
listened.
glad that there was someone there for you, Karen. So
So
grateful.
important.
Yeah.
So important for anybody, whoever it is, whatever age you're at, if you're about to disclose something of such magnitude,
And
it's
it
so
is.
important that the person you disclose it to listens to it and believes in what it is that you share, you know, because that will either support you or shatter you more. And I was very lucky that she listened and she believed and she made a plan. She made this safety plan about how we were going to disclose it to my mother then and how we were going to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And then again, you know, and that was all in one day. So even though
That's a lot
way
for one day.
for a 14-year-old,
Yes.
it was a massive burden to carry. And I actually felt like that. I felt that I was the problem, that I was the burden, that I was creating all of this drama and this pain and suffering, that I was bringing this into everyone's experience. Nothing in me had the ability to be angry at the person who actually had done this. I did not think in that way. I turned it so much in on myself that I even blamed me, the victim, my own victimhood for all of this happening, which is what we all do. We will run to the self and blame the self before we reclaim our strength and power and go, you did this. It's not me. You did this to me. I couldn't do that back then, you know. So that again, that in itself was another journey for me as well. You know, it was a big journey to come home to myself through all of that pain and suffering. Yeah.
Yeah, Karen, that was one of the things that I was curious about, that how did you manage to come back to you, to do the work that it takes to come back to you, to discover self-love? Because that small component of an abuse scenario, that little self-love component, that takes ages, doesn't it? Like, it just takes loads of work, loads of changing the way you think, changing the way that you do things. It is wonderfully beneficial, but it's not easy, is it?
No, you know, I think the first crack in my armoring up. So when I say armoring up, that is the part of me that is entrapped. Think of a medieval knight who's wearing this big armor and he's hidden inside. And the armor is to protect you from war. But really, the armor is the very thing that robs you of connection with life. So inside of, beneath my armor, and, you know, we had self-hate, we had self-loathing, we had so much. But the crack came, you know, when I did disclose about my dad and I did share it to my mother, you know, and the police were involved. There was a period of time where, you know, I just did not know if what I wanted to do, did I want to put him in prison, which required make a statement? I just did not know. So I sat with the two police people and they explained the process of a statement. They did share, look, you will tell your story, you'll sign it. We will arrest your dad. We put him into prison. He'll be in prison for a few years and then your dad will be released. Something in all of that just didn't make me go, okay, let's do this. I just went, I still don't know. And I didn't know. And I came home and I had a profound, I'll call it night schooling where you learn in your dream.
Yes.
So I had
That's
this
a great
dream. Yeah, night school. I was a pupil of night school. I had this profound dream, and the dream was that I did make the statement, and my dad was being arrested on the day, and he's been put in the car, and he turned and he looked back at me through the back window of the car, and this presence came right beside me and asked me, I didn't look, it just spoke, look into your dad's heart for me. And when I looked into my dad's heart, you know, the film continued. He's in prison. The heart gets very gray, very dark. His energy system is shutting down, and he's shutting down as a human, as a soul. More so, I saw the soul of him, not the human personality. And I saw the soul being so damaged by the system. And, you know, I turned and there was Jesus in my dream looking at me. And I woke up and I knew, for me, I was not to make a statement. I knew I was not to incarcerate my dad, I knew that that was not going to do anything for him or actually me, more importantly. I knew this. I saw the guilt that I would feel and the self-doubt and the self-hate that I would experience as a result of doing all of this. So I never made that statement. So that was the first catalyst, we'll say, of cracking open my consciousness, or my psyche.
Yes.
And we'll fast forward in time, and I'm then 17. You know, I did end up with self-hate, as you know. I attempted suicide when I was 15. I was homeless on the streets, using drugs to numb the pain. I was having sex with men that were a lot older than me. I was objectifying my own self. So I really, you know, I lashed out. I had consciously known not to do this to my dad, and that felt great. And I felt I was in tune with the truth of my core self.
But it
then
didn't help you, did it, Karen?
Well,
and that's one of the things that the audience, one of the things that the audience might not understand, that as a result of these, this abuse, there are certain things that are predictably going to happen in the victim's life. And those things are promiscuity, drug and alcohol abuse, homelessness, etc., etc. And they happen to many victims. And it's just because of self-hatred, isn't it, really?
Yeah, you're trying to run away from who it is that you are, but you cannot physically run away because you're tied up with the self. So the drugs for me were an escape. It numbed the pain, you know, and my pain intensified because everyone else around me could not understand why I did not want to incarcerate my father. They couldn't get that. So they couldn't support that I was doing what I intuitively felt was the right way on my path for healing. So when they started to kind of say, how could you not? It began to shut me down more. It began to make me self-loathe even more and self-reject even more. And that then led to the homelessness and not being able to be around my family of origin and wanting to escape from reality. Luckily, at the age of 16, I got a job cleaning rooms in a hotel, which was fantastic. And what resulted out of that was a conference in the hotel to be an au pair. And I had shared with my mother, look, I'd love to be an au pair.
Yeah.
That resulted in my mother knowing, she worked with a friend, and her friend's daughter was an au pair in France, and they were looking for a new au pair to come. Within 3 weeks, I said, yes, I'm on a plane. I've no French. I had just turned 17.
Amazing 17-year-old. Wow.
I know. It was like, you know, and what happened was I ended up living with this extraordinary family. I grew up in, you know, a social disadvantaged area. I had left school when I was 15. My parents, my dad worked from when he was 15. He had no schooling, you know, so here I am. I'm in France. I'm in this gorgeous, like, chalet house. My bedroom is on the 3rd floor. I have a balcony off my bedroom. I'm looking at Mount Blanc and all the Alps. I am in this luxurious lifestyle where I'm skiing, where I'm with these incredible other au pair girls. And one day I crashed on my scooter and I broke my ribs and finger. And my au pair mother, which I did not know her gift, I heard she was a cranial therapist, did not even know what that meant. But she'd laid me down and she just put her hands on me and healed my ribs and my finger with touch. And she stood me up and put her hand on my heart and cried and looked at me and said, you have had so much trauma for such a young age. And she said, if you don't learn about forgiveness, you will get so sick. All this self-hate and all this pain will manifest in illness and you will become very sick. I heard, Toni, that I was going to get myself sick if I didn't learn about forgiveness. I could hear that in her.
Wow.
2 weeks later, we were on a plane because every winter they take their family away to somewhere warm. So I'm now on a plane flying to St. Lucia Island in the Caribbean. Again, another wow, magical, like, wow, the vibrancy. I've never seen anything like this. Tropical waters. I never saw this. And, you know, those words forgiveness really, really hit me. Like I would walk to the beach with her little Alex, the 2-year-old.
Yes.
And intuitively, it was like as if she knew. She would just fall asleep the minute we'd arrive with the little pram on the beach. And I always got my time, my hour for contemplation.
Yeah.
So for about a month, I kept going to God. How do I forgive? How do I forgive this man? You know, he was my dad. He hurt me. How do I forgive him? And I just heard a voice deep within me saying, write him a letter. Write a letter to your dad. And without even thinking about it, what I now call soul writing, I just got my pen and paper and I poured my heart and soul onto that page, literally. And I licked it with about 30 stamps to ensure it would make its way all the way to Ireland. But the energy that lifted off of my physical body, I had no awareness of how much I had been carrying energetically until I said those words. And I wrote, I will never forget, but I am willing to forgive you. And that was a massive shift energetically. And then I was gifted from my mother months later, where she actually disclosed to me that she would hear my father at nighttime in the other room with the papers, and she knew he was reading the letter, and she would just hear him sobbing throughout the night. So something in me felt, you know what, we're ready to talk. We're ready to have a dialogue. So I returned home to Ireland heavily pregnant. I fell in love in France. I met a beautiful man and I lived with him for nearly a year. And I came home to have my son. I was now 19 and his dad was 27. And 3 weeks before I gave birth, he wrote me a letter to say he could not entertain me, was his words in English, entertain me or the baby anymore. And he was sorry. He could not be in our lives. For me, you know, it was a shattered moment because I'm big belly, no pram, no cot, assuming I'm returning back to France to have my life there. But look, this is where life takes care of us. I was to have my life experience back in Ireland, and I did. So I had my beautiful son and we lived alone together. And I wanted more out of my life. When I gave birth to Aaron, I knew I wanted to heal everything that had happened in me. I did not want my son to ever have to carry any of that vibration. Now, I did not know I was thinking about or tapping into intergenerational work. This was just my little way of looking at it. I don't want him ever to endure what I endured. And I was gifted that, you know. My dad called up one Friday and I left him in. My son was in school. He was in play school at the time. He was only 4. And I sat with my dad at the table, you know, and I got brave and I looked deeply into the eyes and I asked him straight up, accountability, why me? Why would you do this to me? We ended up having the most profound conversations every Friday. I learned all about his childhood. I learned about his brokenness. I learned the suffering he went through. So I learned compassion for humanity. I learned that he brought into my relationship with him the very things that had happened in his childhood. So, and in that moment as well, you know, he looked at me and said to me, the day I read your letter, when you said that you were willing to forgive me, was the day I felt I could be this better man, that I could change. What do you say to that other than, wow, you know? And that wholeheartedly has been the ultimate truth. Holding redemption for both me and my father meant that I could heal from what had happened to me. It also meant that he could heal what he had done to another person. And it totally changed the vibration of the family dynamic. Everybody in my family has now healed from that childhood timeline. You know, my mother got to heal it with my dad. My siblings got to heal from it. And that has been the magnitude of the work that I have really done through forgiveness. I've really healed this beautiful family.
that intergenerational trauma, we have to talk about that, Karen, in terms of it's no good hiding secrets, because all they do is fester and destroy and cause more trauma. It's until someone is courageous enough to step up and go, this happened, and start the healing process. It not only heals the person, i.e. you, Karen, but it's healed your entire family and all of those generations and your son. Yeah.
Yeah. And my daughter now. Yeah.
Yes.
And they know about my dad. So it was never hidden. This is the power of it.
It is,
you know,
the power of no secrets.
Forgiveness. Yeah. And no secrets. Like, you know, a lot of people could not understand my capacity to forgive my dad, you know, and they would project their own, which is okay, their own disgust of what had happened onto me. And I'm okay with that. You know, as I would say to people, I earned the right to choose how I need to heal. I was the victim in this relationship. So it's down to me. It's not up to you.
That's right.
It's actually up to me.
It's up to you.
How I choose to heal this. And forgiveness is not a weakness. It's not saying I give permission to what has happened to me. No. It actually is the opposite. It is saying
it's for you.
That in order to have forgiven someone, I've had to really, really meet every painful emotion in me and transmute and transcend those emotions in order then to be able to take a better, healthier perspective of what happened. You can't reach the healthy perspective without doing the painful dark night of the soul work. And when I was able to get to the energy of forgiveness, energetically, it transmuted so much pain.
That helped a lot, didn't it, Karen? The forgiveness piece helped the most in your situation.
And, you know, I think, Toni, in truth, the real reason why I was able to do this work is because I had a person who actually, you know, did not deny what they had done. They totally said, I did this to you. And then they asked for the help as well. And they asked for this work with me, you know. So had my dad totally denied he'd done this to me, we would be in a very different conversation today, you know. Yeah, truly.
It's such a formidable story of truth, healing, and forgiveness wrapped up in your life, Karen. I'm incredibly grateful that you've shared with the audience so authentically about trauma and abuse. And I know that you spend your life now working with other people. So how can people work with you, Karen?
Yeah, a lot of people would reach out to me via my website, you know, and they would just, you know, fill in the contact form. You know, I'm such an approachable person. In other words, you know, if people follow me on Instagram and they message me, I always respond. You know, I'm there for humanity in whatever way I'm to be led each day, and that's my style of work. It's like, utilize me, use me in whatever shape or form that is to be. And sometimes it might be that I'm, you know, sitting in a coffee shop and someone is right beside me and we just end up talking. And then there's this beautiful, you know, wonderful little conversation that happens and the person leaves with something. And I always leave with something too. Clients give to me so much as well. And this is why I love the work that I do, because I have done 22 years of deep inner work. And I know that the way out is the way in. The answer is within us.
Within us.
We are the answer. That's what I know. To our own life's problems. We are the medicine to our pain. We are the solution to our problem. We are it. We are the ones we've been waiting for. You know, we are it.
It is within each one of us. And sometimes working with an amazing therapist will help you unravel and get back to what is within you. Karen, you have on your website, which is the Soul, SOUL, luciantherapist.com. There on your site, people can connect with you and ask about the things that you do and the work that you do. And you're very open, as you said, to people connecting and chatting to you. You're also on Instagram, Facebook, and the website. And that's the best way to connect with you, isn't it, Karen? Via the website?
Yeah, by the website, and I'm always on Instagram. I'm just not.
And I was just going to say,
I'm not great with social media platforms. yeah. Instagram is where I hang out, digitally.
Yes, good. Karen, again, thank you for sharing your story with our audience. Greatly appreciate you having this open conversation. And again, we can't heal others. We can't heal the world if we don't keep having these conversations, if we don't keep hearing that this is what people have gone through and this is what they've healed from. It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah. And thank you to you for holding space for people to be able to have these type of conversations. I mean, these are the real conversations.
Yes.
These are the conversations that will absolutely help us to recognize, number one, you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
That somebody else has experienced something so similar, so you don't have to be alone when you hear these type of conversations.
No.
These are such deep connection. It's for, the connection of everyone else watching this and tuning into this. This is for you. We're showing up for this. So Toni, thank you too for just having the heart and consciousness to really want to serve in this way. Thank you.
It is a privilege to talk to people openly about trauma. There's so much more that we could talk about, but I am conscious that the beautiful Karen needs to get on with her day, helping more and more people in therapy and conversation to heal and learn about forgiveness. I think it's the most beautiful story I've heard in a long time. I must honestly admit that forgiveness for me is still a work in progress. And hearing your story gives me faith that I will get there. And I want to encourage other people to do the work. You'll be so, and when we talk about doing the work, that is healing and transmuting the pain associated with trauma. And that is, quite frankly, conversations with people who are safe and who deserve and who you trust to have those conversations with. And Karen is particularly one of those very special people on this planet. Karen Whelan, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
And thank you for having me, and thank you to your audience as well. Thank you.
Please, if you have any questions about the show today, if it's triggered anything within you, please reach out to Karen. She would be delighted to help you in any way possible, and I encourage you to do that today. Don't let another week go by living in that pain of trauma that you just can't seem to get through or get out the other side of. Get some help. And there's beautiful, wonderful, amazing people like Karen across the planet. But if you'd like to DM her on Instagram, please do that. Karen, that's our lot for this week. Thank you once again for coming on the show. I can't wait for another conversation soon. And that, my friends, is your lot for this week. Bye for now.